The streetlights streak past the passenger window in a rhythm I've memorized, amber pools dissolving into darkness before the next one appears. Grant's fingers drum against the steering wheel, a habit I know as well as my own heartbeat. The radio hums something low and forgettable, barely audible over the engine and the whisper of tires on asphalt. We're driving the same route we always take from Murphy's Bar, past the 24-hour diner with its flickering neon sign, past the strip mall that closes at 9, past the apartment complex where Grant's ex-girlfriend used to live before she transferred schools. I should be tired. It's past midnight, and the beer sits warm and heavy in my stomach, but something about these drives home keeps me alert. Maybe it's the way Grant looks when he thinks no one is watching, his profile softened by dashboard light. Or maybe it's the way the night feels like a secret we're both keeping without knowing what is. He's laughing about something Marcus said at the bar, something about his terrible pickup line with the bartender, and I'm nodding along even though I wasn't really listening when it happened. I was watching Grant instead, the way he leaned against the bar with that easy confidence that drew people to him like gravity. I've been watching him for 2 years now, telling myself it's just friendship, just the natural way you pay attention to someone who fills up a room. The laugh dies between us as Grant slows the car. At first I think at a red light, but there are no intersections here, just the long stretch of road that leads toward campus. The engine settles into an idle, and I realize we've pulled onto the shoulder. Cars pass us in the opposite direction, their headlights sweeping across our windshield before disappearing into the night. I turn to ask him what's wrong, if something's happened with the car, but the words dissolve when I see his face. He's looking at me with an expression I've never seen before, something raw and uncertain that makes my chest tighten. His hand is still on the steering wheel, but his body has shifted toward me, and suddenly the space between us feels charged with something I don't have a name for. Grant doesn't say anything. He doesn't make a joke or laugh it off the way he usually does when moments get too serious. Instead, he leans across the center console, moving slowly, deliberately, like he's crossing a bridge he's not sure will hold his weight. His breath smells like the IPA he was nursing all evening, warm and familiar, but there's something else underneath it, something that makes my pulse skip. I should move away. I should ask him what he's doing, should laugh and break whatever spell has settled over us in this idling car on the side of an empty road. But I don't. I can't. Because some part of me has been waiting for this moment without ever admitting it to myself, has been holding its breath for 2 years while I told myself that the way I noticed Grant was normal, that everyone paid attention to their friends the way I paid attention to him. The space between us shrinks to nothing. I can see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, can count the freckles scattered across his nose. His hand moves from the steering wheel to rest on the seat between us, fingers just inches from my thigh, and I feel like I'm standing at the edge of a cliff with no idea how far the drop might be. My heart pounds so hard I'm certain he can hear it over the engine's idle. Everything feels suspended, like we're existing in the space between one breath and the next, between the person I was when we left the bar and whoever I might become in the next few seconds. The radio continues its soft static, and somewhere in the distance a siren wails, but all of it feels like it's happening in another world, one that doesn't include this car, this moment, the heat of Grant's proximity. He's close enough now that I can see the way his lips part slightly, can feel the warmth radiating from his skin. Time moves like honey, thick and golden, and I think about all the nights we've spent together, all the casual touches that felt like more than they should have, all the moments when I caught him looking at me and wondered if I was imagining the intensity in his gaze. I've never let myself think about what it would feel like if Grant wanted me the way I've wanted him. It seemed too impossible, too much like wishful thinking disguised as friendship. But here, in the amber glow of the dashboard, with his eyes searching mine like he's looking for permission or maybe courage, impossible doesn't seem like the right word anymore. The silence stretches between us, heavy with everything we've never said. I can feel the moment balancing on a knife's edge, ready to tip towards something that will change everything or retreat back into the safety of what we've always been. Part of me wants to speak, to ask him what this means, what he's thinking, what happens after this moment ends. But another part of me knows that words would shatter whatever fragile thing is building between us, would force us to name something that feels too big and too new for language. Instead, I stay perfectly still, hardly breathing, letting the weight of his attention settle over me like something precious and breakable. The night outside continues its quiet business, but inside this car, inside this moment, the world has narrowed to just us, just the space between what we were and what we might become. Grant's eyes never leave mine, and I realize that everything I thought I knew about friendship, about the careful boundaries I've maintained, about the person I believe myself to be, is shifting like sand beneath my feet. This isn't the planned, careful life I've built for myself. This is something wild and uncharted, something that asks me to be braver than I've ever been. The engine continues its steady rhythm, a heartbeat keeping time while we exist in this suspended moment. And I understand, with a clarity that surprises me, that whatever happens next will divide my life into before and after, will mark the point where everything I thought I knew about myself and about us changed forever. I've always been the careful one, the one who counts drinks before the night gets away from us, who makes sure everyone has a ride home, who keeps phone chargers in my backpack and cash for late-night food runs. My friends joke that I'm the designated grown-up, the one who remembers to eat dinner before drinking and who never loses his keys or his wallet or his way back to reality. It's a role I fell into without choosing it, maybe because someone had to, or maybe because being responsible gave me a place in the group that felt secure. Safe. I've never been the magnetic one, never the guy who walks into a party and changes the energy of the room just by existing. That's Grant's territory, and I've learned to be okay with watching from the sidelines, with being the steady presence that people can rely on when the night turns messy. Grant is everything I'm not. He's the kind of person who orders another round when everyone else is ready to leave, who convinces strangers to join our table, who turns a quiet Tuesday into an adventure just because he's bored. He has this laugh that carries across crowded rooms, this way of making everyone feel like they're part of something bigger just by being near him. I've watched him charm bartenders into free drinks, talk his way out of parking tickets, convince professors to extend deadlines with nothing but a smile and a story about his grandmother's imaginary surgery. We met freshman year in a chemistry lab where I was struggling to balance equations, and he was somehow managing to flirt with our lab partner while still getting better results than me. He needed help with the homework, and I needed someone who wouldn't make me feel invisible. It was an easy trade that grew into something more complicated over the months that followed. I remember the first time he invited me to a party. I've been planning to spend Saturday nights studying for our midterm, but Grant knocked on my dorm room door with that grin that made it impossible to say no. The party was loud and crowded, and everything I usually avoided, but watching Grant navigate, it was like studying a foreign language I wanted to learn. He moved through groups of people like he belonged everywhere, like the night was designed specifically for him. That was when I first noticed it, the way my attention followed him, even when I tried to focus on conversations with other people. The way I found excuses to stay close to him in crowded spaces, told myself it was just because he was my ride home. The way I memorized the stories he told, the way his voice dropped when he was being serious, the way he ran his fingers through his hair when he was thinking. For 2 years, I perfected the art of looking without staring, of caring without seeming to care too much. I've learned to laugh at his jokes about the girls he dates, to give advice about his relationship problems, to be the friend who listens without judgment when things fall apart. I've gotten good at burying the part of me that wonders what it would feel like to be the person he thinks about, the one he calls when he can't sleep, the one who gets to know all the quiet parts of him that he doesn't show the world. I told myself it was just friendship. Everyone has that one friend they pay extra attention to. Everyone has someone they notice more than they probably should. It didn't mean anything that I knew he always orders his coffee with too much sugar, that he gets quiet when he's thinking about his parents' divorce, that he has a scar on his left shoulder from falling off his bike when he was 12. Friends know these things about each other. Friends care. But friends don't usually spend nights lying awake, replaying conversations, looking for hidden meanings in casual touches. Friends don't usually feel their pulse quicken when someone laughs at their jokes. don't usually find themselves making excuses to text just to see how someone's day is going. Friends don't usually feel a hollow ache in their chest when they watch someone they care about with other people, don't usually have to bite back words that feel too honest, too revealing. I've been so careful to keep these feelings locked away that I almost convinced myself they didn't exist. Almost. But careful only works until it doesn't. Until you're sitting in a car on the side of a dark road, and the person you've been not thinking about for 2 years is leaning across the space between you with an expression that suggests maybe you weren't the only one pretending. The thing about being careful is that it becomes a habit, a way of moving through the world that feels safer than the alternative. I've built my life around small risks and predictable outcomes, around being the person others can count on rather than the person who needs counting on. I've learned to want things quietly, to hope for things without saying them out loud, to accept whatever version of closeness people are willing to give me without asking for more. But sitting here with Grant's breath warm in the space between us, with his eyes searching mine like he's looking for something he's been afraid to name, all that careful restraint feels suddenly fragile. Like something built from paper that was never meant to withstand real weather. Like something that was always temporary, just waiting for the right moment to dissolve completely. The dashboard light catches the gold flecks in his brown eyes, and I realize that maybe I've been wrong about which of us is the brave one. Grant's voice breaks the silence, low and careful in a way I've never heard before. I can't keep pretending I don't think about this. The words hang in the air between us like something fragile, something that might shatter if either of us moves too quickly. This. He says it like it's obvious, like the weight of that single word contains everything we've never said to each other, everything I've been afraid to even think too clearly. But hearing him say, it makes my chest tight with something that feels like relief and terror in equal measure. I want to ask him what this means exactly. I want to make him spell out what he's been thinking about, but the question feels too dangerous. Too much like opening a door I might not be ready to walk through. Instead, I stay perfectly still, afraid that speaking will break whatever spell has settled over us, will send us tumbling back into the safety of jokes and deflection and all the careful ways we've learned to not say what we mean. His eyes don't leave mine, and I can see something vulnerable there, something that looks like fear mixed with hope. It's the same expression he had the night his parents announced their divorce, when he showed up at my dorm room at 2 in the morning and sat on my floor talking until sunrise. But this feels bigger somehow, more fragile. Like he's offering me something precious and terrifying, something that could change everything between us or destroy it completely. The car engine continues its steady rhythm, and I become aware of how small this space is, how there's nowhere to hide from the weight of his attention. Every breath feels deliberate, every heartbeat too loud. I can smell his cologne mixed with the lingering scent of the bar, can see the way his hand trembles slightly where it rests on the seat between us. I think about all the nights we've spent together, all the moments that felt charged with something more than friendship, but that I explained away as imagination, as wishful thinking, as the natural intensity that comes from caring about someone. The way he always saved a seat for me at parties, the way his hand would find my shoulder when he laughed, the way he'd look at me, sometimes like he was trying to solve a puzzle he couldn't quite figure out. Now those moments rearrange themselves in my memory, taking on new weight, new meaning. The time he fell asleep on my couch, and I watched him breathe for an hour before covering him with a blanket. The night he broke up with Sarah and spent 3 hours in my room talking about how empty everything felt, how he couldn't figure out what was missing. The way he always seemed to find excuses to stay close to me in crowded places, his presence a constant warm pressure at my side. Maybe I wasn't imagining it after all. Maybe all those careful boundaries I built, all that energy I spent convincing myself I was reading too much into casual touches and lingering glances, maybe it was all just elaborate self-protection. Maybe Grant has been thinking about this too. Whatever this is, whatever it means when the space between friendship and something else gets too thin to navigate safely. The silence stretches, but doesn't feel empty anymore. It feels full of possibility, heavy with all the things we might say if we were brave enough. I can hear my own breathing, can feel the warmth radiating from his skin even though he's not quite touching me. The dashboard clock glows green in the darkness, marking time that feels both endless and too quick, like we're existing in a pocket outside the normal flow of minutes and hours. I realize I'm holding my breath, waiting for something I can't name. For him to explain what he means, or for courage to ask, or for the moment to pass back into the familiar territory of friendship where I know how to be. But none of those things happen. Instead, we stay suspended in this strange new space, both of us afraid to move forward and unable to go back. Grant shifts slightly, and for a moment I think he's going to retreat, go to laugh, and make some joke about the beer, making him sentimental. But he doesn't. His gaze stays steady on mine, and I can see him gathering courage for something, can practically feel the weight of words he's trying to find. The rest of the drive home feels impossible now, like we'll never be able to pretend this conversation didn't happen, like every mile of familiar road between here and campus has been redrawn while we weren't paying attention. I think about sitting in my dorm room later, staring at the ceiling and replaying this moment until it becomes either the best thing that ever happened to me or the thing that ruins everything I thought I knew about us. But that's later. Right now, there's just this car, this darkness, this moment balanced on the edge of something I've been afraid to want. Right now, there's Grant's voice saying he thinks about this, whatever this is, and the sudden, terrifying possibility that maybe I wasn't wrong to notice everything I've been noticing. Maybe I wasn't wrong to hope for something I never let myself hope for out loud. The night stretches around us, patient and infinite, holding space for whatever comes next. We don't talk about it the next day, or the day after that, but something fundamental has shifted between us, like a fault line that's been disturbed, and now everything sits slightly off kilter. I notice it in the way Grant's eyes find mine across crowded lecture halls, in the pause before he answers when I text him, in the way our casual conversations now carry an undercurrent of something unspoken. It starts with small things. A hand on my shoulder that lingers a beat too long when he's laughing at something I said. An invitation to grab coffee that turns into 3 hours of talking about everything except what happened in his car. The way he sits closer to me now, close enough that our knees bump when we're studying in the library, close enough that I can smell his shampoo and feel the warmth of his presence like a constant low hum. He starts finding excuses to be around me more often, texting me about assignments we could easily handle alone, suggesting we walk to class together, even when it means he has to leave his dorm 15 minutes early, showing up at my door with takeout and the claim that he ordered too much food. Each excuse is paper thin, transparent in its obviousness, but I don't call him on it because I'm grateful for everyone. The night he asks if he can crash on my couch, I know he doesn't really need to. His roommate isn't having anyone over. There's no construction noise in his hall, no broken air conditioning or faulty heating. But I say yes anyway, and we spend the evening watching movies neither of us really care about, our attention focused instead on the careful choreography of not quite touching. He sits close enough that I can feel the heat from his leg against mine, can sense every small movement he makes. When the credits roll on the second movie, we don't move to set up the couch. Instead, we keep talking, voices low in the blue glow on my laptop screen. He tells me about the fight he had with his dad over spring break, about how empty his childhood house feels now that his parents live separate lives. I tell him about the anxiety that keeps me awake some nights, about how I sometimes feel like I'm watching my own life from the outside, afraid to fully participate in case I mess something up. These aren't the kinds of conversations we used to have. They're too honest, too revealing, like we're both testing the boundaries of this new version of ourselves. I find myself saying things I've never said out loud, sharing thoughts I usually keep carefully guarded. And Grant listens with an attention that feels different from before, more focused, like he's trying to memorize every word. We fall asleep sometime after 2, both of us still dressed, lying on top of my comforter with just a spare blanket thrown over us. I wake up first, disoriented by the warmth pressed against my side, by the unfamiliar weight of another person in my bed. Grant is closer than he was when we fell asleep, his face turned toward mine, his breathing deep and even. His arm has found its way across my chest, and his fingers are curled loosely in the fabric of my shirt. I should move. I should wake him up and suggest he head back to his own room before his first class. But I don't. Instead, I lie perfectly still, afraid to disturb this moment, this rare glimpse of Grant without his usual armor of charm and confidence. In sleep, he looks younger, more vulnerable, and I find myself studying the curve of his mouth, the way his dark hair falls across his forehead. When he wakes up 20 minutes later, our eyes meet before either of us speaks. There's a moment of awareness, of recognition of how close we are, how intimate this feels. I expect him to pull away, to make some joke about being a bed hog or needing coffee. Instead, he stays where he is, his arms still across my chest, his gaze steady on mine. "Good morning," he says, his voice rough with sleep. And there's something in the way he says it, something soft and wondering, like he's surprised to find himself here, but not unhappy about it. "Good morning," I say back, and my voice comes out quieter than I intended, like I'm afraid of breaking the spell that's settled over us. We lie there for another few minutes, neither of us moving, neither of us addressing what this means. The morning light filters through my blinds, casting everything in gold, and I think about how different this feels from all the other mornings I've woken up alone. How right it feels, despite how terrifying it is. Eventually, Grant sits up, running his hands through his hair, and the moment dissolves back into something that resembles normal. But normal has been redefined now. Normal includes the way he looks at me as he's leaving, like he's trying to figure something out. Normal includes the text he sent me an hour later asking if I want to grab lunch, even though we never used to eat together during the day. Normal includes this constant current running between us, this sense that we're moving towards something neither of us has named, but both of us feel pulling us forward, step by careful step. It happens on a Thursday night, 3 weeks after everything started shifting between us. Grant offers to drive me home from the library, even though I have my bike and the weather is perfect for riding. I should say no, should maintain some semblance of the independence I've always prided myself on, but I find myself saying yes before I can think too hard about why. The drive starts like all the others have lately, charged with this undercurrent of something unspoken. We talk about our upcoming finals, about his job interview next week, about anything except the way he keeps glancing at me when he thinks I'm not looking. The radio plays something soft and forgettable, and I watch the familiar streets pass by, thinking about how many times we've taken this route and how different it feels every time now. But instead of turning into the parking lot of my building, Grant drives past it. I notice, but don't say anything, curious about where this detour might lead us. He takes the long way around campus, past the science building where we first met, past the coffee shop where we've spent countless afternoons studying, past all the places that have become part of our shared geography. When he finally parks, we're sitting outside my apartment complex, but he makes no move to get out or to suggest that I should. The engine ticks as it cools, and I can hear the distant sound of music from someone's open window, laughter from a group of people walking past on the sidewalk. Normal life continuing around us while we sit in this bubble of tension and possibility. I start to thank him for the ride, start to reach for the door handle, but Grant's voice stops me. "Wait," he says, and there's something in his tone that makes me settle back into my seat, makes me turn to face him fully. He's looking straight ahead through the windshield, his hands still gripping the steering, well, even though we're not going anywhere. I can see the muscle in his jaw working, can tell he's trying to find the right words for something that feels too big for language. The silence stretches between us, but it's different from the comfortable quiet we usually share. This feels loaded, expectant, like the moment before thunder when the air gets thick and electric. I wait, barely breathing, afraid that speaking will make him lose his nerve, will send us back to the careful dance we've been doing for weeks. When he finally speaks, his voice is quieter than usual, more uncertain. "I've thought about kissing you since sophomore year." The words hit me like a physical thing, like something I can feel settling in my chest. Since sophomore year. That's almost 2 years of thinking about it. 2 years of whatever this feeling is that I've been trying so hard to ignore or explain away. 2 years of him watching me the way I've been watching him, of him finding excuses to be close the way I've been finding excuses to let him. My heart starts beating so hard I'm surprised it doesn't shake the whole car. I think about sophomore year, about the night we stayed up until dawn working on our chemistry project, about how he fell asleep on my floor and I covered him with my extra blanket and spent an hour just watching him breathe. I think about all the moments since then that I've replayed in my mind, wondering if I was imagining the charge between us, if I was seeing things that weren't there. But they were there. They were real. This feeling that's been growing between us, this pull that I've been afraid to name, it wasn't one-sided after all. Since sophomore year, I repeat, and my voice comes out smaller than I intended, like I'm afraid of the weight these words carry. Grant turns to look at me then, and I can see everything in his expression that he's been hiding, all the careful control he's been maintaining finally cracking open. There's fear there, and hope, and something that looks like relief at finally saying it out loud. I think about all the nights I've lain awake wondering what it would feel like if Grant wanted me the way I wanted him. All the times I've caught myself staring at his mouth when he talks. All the moments I've had to bite back words that felt too honest, too revealing. All the careful distance I've maintained because I was so sure this feeling was mine alone. The space between us and the car feels enormous and microscopic at the same time. I could reach out and touch him, could close the gap between his confession and whatever comes next. But I'm terrified of moving, terrified of breaking this moment where everything I've hoped for without admitting I was hoping for it hangs in the air between us. Since sophomore year, he says again, like he needs to make sure I heard him, like he needs to make sure I understand what he's telling me. All this time, I've been thinking about what it would be like to kiss you, what it would be like to stop pretending we're just friends. Just friends. The words that have defined us for 2 years. The safe label that's let us be close without having to examine what that closeness really meant. But sitting here in his car with his confession settling between us like something fragile and precious, those words feel suddenly inadequate, suddenly false. I realize I've been waiting for this moment without knowing I was waiting for it, holding my breath for 2 years while telling myself that what I felt was normal, acceptable, the kind of thing that would pass if I just ignore it long enough. But Grant has been feeling it too. Grant has been thinking about kissing me since sophomore year. The weight of his confession settles between us like something alive, breathing in the small space of his car. I can feel my pulse in my throat, can hear the blood rushing in my ears. Since sophomore year, the words keep echoing in my mind, rearranging everything I thought I knew about us, about him, about myself. I want to say something, but every response feels inadequate. Thank you feels wrong. Me too feels too small. I've been waiting for you to say that feels too honest, too much like admitting how many nights I've fallen asleep thinking about this exact moment, how many times I've imagined what it would feel like to stop pretending. Grant doesn't push. He doesn't ask me what I'm thinking or demand an immediate response. He just waits, his hands still gripping the steering wheel, his eyes searching my face for some sign of how his words have landed. And there's something so generous about that patience, something that makes my chest ache with how much I care about him, how much I've always cared about him. But caring isn't the same as being brave. And this moment requires a kind of bravery I'm not sure I possess. If I say yes to this, if I lean across the space between us and show him that I want this too, everything changes. The easy friendship we've built, the comfortable dynamic where I know exactly where I stand, all of it dissolves into something uncharted and terrifying. What if I'm not what he expects? What if the reality of us doesn't match whatever he's been imagining? What if I disappoint him in ways I can't even anticipate? The practical part of my mind starts cataloging all the ways this could go wrong. We have the same friend group, the same classes, the same small world where avoiding each other would be impossible if things get messy. I think about the awkwardness that would follow us everywhere, the way our friends would notice the tension and ask questions we wouldn't know how to answer. I think about losing him entirely, about watching him pull away because I made everything complicated. But then I look at his face in the dim light of the dashboard, at the vulnerability in his expression, at the way he's sitting perfectly still like he's afraid any movement might shatter this moment. And I realize that maybe the bigger risk is saying no. Maybe the bigger risk is letting fear make this choice for me, is spending the rest of my life wondering what would have happened if I had been brave enough to want something out loud. I think about all the times over the past 2 years when I felt like I was living my life at half volume, keeping the most important parts of myself carefully hidden. The way I've learned to want things quietly, to hope for things without ever asking for them. The safety of that approach, but also the loneliness of it, the way it's kept me separate from my own life. Grant shifts slightly in his seat, and I can tell he's starting to worry about my silence, starting to wonder if he's made a terrible mistake. The thought of him regretting this confession, of him pulling back into himself and pretending it never happened, makes something fierce and protective rise up in my chest. He was brave enough to say it out loud. The least I can do is be brave enough to respond honestly. I turn to face him fully, and our eyes meet in the blue glow of the dashboard clock. There's a question in his gaze, but there's also something steady and patient that makes me feel like I can take my time figuring out how to answer it. I've thought about it too, I say, and my voice comes out quieter than I intended, rough with the weight of finally saying something true. More than I should have, more than I let myself admit. Something changes in his expression, relief and hope mixing together in a way that makes my heart skip. But he still doesn't move, still gives me space to find my way to whatever comes next. I think about all the careful boundaries I've maintained, all the energy I've spent convincing myself that what I felt was manageable, containable, something I could live with as long as I never acted on it. But sitting here with Grant looking at me like I'm something precious and fragile, I realize that maybe I don't want to contain it anymore. Maybe I'm tired of being careful. The space between us feels charged with possibility, electric with all the things we might say or do next. I can see Grant's chest rising and falling with his breathing, can smell his cologne mixed with the lingering scent of his laundry detergent. Everything about this moment feels heightened, significant, like something I'll remember for the rest of my life regardless of what happens next. Slowly, carefully, like I'm reaching for something that might disappear if I move too quickly, I lean toward him. The distance between us shrinks inch by inch, and I can see his pupils dilate, can feel the warmth radiating from his skin. Grant meets me halfway, his hand coming up to cup the side of my face, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone. The touch is gentle, tentative, like he's still not entirely sure this is real. When our lips finally meet, it's soft at first, uncertain. But then something gives way between us, 2 years of careful restraint dissolving into something urgent and real and undeniable. The kiss tastes like possibility, like the end of pretending, like the beginning of something I've been afraid to want, but can't imagine living without now that it's happening. When we break apart, neither of us speaks. The silence is different now, warm and certain, heavy with the weight of what we've just chosen. The world outside the car continues exactly as it was before. The same streetlights cast their amber pools on empty asphalt. The same distant music drifts from someone's open window. The same group of late-night students walks past on the sidewalk, their laughter carrying on the spring air. But inside this small space, everything has shifted into something entirely new. Grant's forehead rests against mine, our breathing still uneven, still catching on the weight of what just happened. His hand remains curved against my cheek, his thumb tracing a gentle line along my jaw. Neither of us speaks, and the silence feels sacred somehow, like words would be too crude for what we're feeling, too small to contain the magnitude of this moment. I can feel the warmth of his breath against my lips, can see the way the dashboard light catches the gold flecks in his brown eyes. He's looking at me like he's seeing me for the first time, like every conversation we've ever had, every casual touch, every moment of careful distance has led us to exactly this point. And maybe it has. Maybe this was always where we were heading, even when we were both too afraid to admit it. The taste of him lingers on my mouth, sweet and unfamiliar and exactly right. I think about how many times I've wondered what this would feel like, how many nights I've fallen asleep trying not to imagine exactly this scenario. But the reality is so much more than anything my careful imagination conjured. The reality is Grant's fingers tangled in my hair, the soft sound he made when our lips first met, the way something fundamental shifted in my chest when 2 years of pretending finally dissolved into something honest and real. My heart is still racing, but it's a different kind of racing now. Not the panicked flutter of fear or uncertainty, but something steadier, more certain. Like my body finally recognizing something it's been waiting for without knowing it was waiting. Like coming home to a place I didn't know existed until this moment. Grant shifts slightly, and I think he's going to pull away, going to create space between us so we can talk about what this means, what happens next. But he doesn't. Instead, he settles more comfortably in his seat, his hand moving to rest on the back of my neck, his fingers warm against my skin. The dashboard clock glows green in the darkness, marking time that feels both endless and too quick. It's past midnight now, officially tomorrow, officially the day after everything changed between us. I wonder if that matters, if we'll remember this as the night Grant told me he'd been thinking about kissing me since sophomore year, or as the morning I finally kissed him back. There's something profound about sitting here in the aftermath, about existing in this pocket of time before we have to figure out what comes next. Before we have to think about how to tell our friends, how to navigate this new version of ourselves, how to be Grant and Elijah who kiss each other instead of Grant and Elijah who carefully don't. I think about tomorrow, about walking into our usual coffee shop and ordering our usual drinks and sitting at our usual table, but with this new knowledge humming between us. I think about study sessions that will mean something different now, about casual touches that won't be casual anymore, about all the ways our careful friendship will transform into something braver and more honest. But mostly I think about how right this feels, how all the anxiety I carried about ruining what we had seems suddenly ridiculous because what we had was already this, just buried under 2 years of careful pretending. We were already choosing each other every day, already finding excuses to be close, already building something that looked like love, even when we were too afraid to call it that. Grant's breathing has settled into something deeper, more relaxed, and I realize he's not going anywhere. Not tonight, not from this moment, not from whatever we're becoming. The certainty of that settles in my chest like something warm and steady, like a truth I can finally stop being afraid of. The night stretches ahead of us, full of possibility, full of conversations we haven't had yet, confessions we haven't made, kisses we haven't shared, full of all the ways we'll learn to be ourselves with each other, without the careful boundaries that have defined us for so long. I close my eyes and let myself exist fully in this moment, in the warmth of Grant's hand against my neck, in the quiet intimacy of our breathing synchronized in the darkness, in the knowledge that when I wake up tomorrow, this will still be real. Grant will still be the person who's been thinking about kissing me since sophomore year, and I'll still be the person who finally let him. Outside, the world continues its late-night business, oblivious to the quiet revolution happening inside this car. But inside, two friends have become something more, something they've been moving toward for 2 years without quite knowing it. Inside, the night feels infinite and precious, heavy with the weight of what's just begun. Grant's fingers trace a gentle pattern against my neck, and I think about how many more nights like this we might have, how many more moments of discovery and honesty and this particular kind of happiness that feels like coming home. The engine has long since cooled, but neither of us makes any move to leave. We sit in the glow of the dashboard, two silhouettes finally brave enough to stop pretending, finally ready to see what comes next.